my space friends. Welcome to another episode of the Launch Sequence podcast. This is your weekly space game episode where we spend a lot of time talking about Star Citizen, but we've been dipping into Starfield a little more lately. But today is all Star Citizen, and I have brought in good friend and fellow YouTuber Avenger One to talk about piracy and protection and what's going to happen with this going forward. You recently put a video out about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've been diving more and more into combat, stealing cargo, getting into piracy, something that's kind of blown up since 3.18.
Oh yeah.
Well, for starters, how you been?
Well, it's good to be back. I missed you, buddy. I mean, how do I put this into words? I've been feeling great. I've been doing great. Channel's been doing good. We're getting lots of activity. A lot of people getting trained. A lot of good feedback. I mean, it's just been good all around.
That's good, man.
Excited, right? And the whole piracy thing has been probably some of the most fun I've had in Star Citizen yet. And I've been playing this game since it initially came out, all the way back in the hangar module, right? So it kind of gives me, for some of the guys who probably haven't seen me or maybe know some of my past, I used to play a game called EVE Online, and we did a lot of piracy in that game. And I mean, the whole game is basically pirates pirating pirates. And it really gave me, like, the recent operations we've been on with piracy have made me feel like I'm playing EVE Online in some sense, and it's been a really good thing because it's the best parts of EVE that they've kind of transferred over into Star Citizen, which I think is awesome.
Okay. Yeah, I actually tried EVE. Funny enough, I jumped into EVE back in 2008 or 9 probably. And at the time, I started playing the game, started looking more into it. I was like, oh, wow, this game's like 3 or 4 years old. All these people are flying around with these cool spaceships and they've got like all their stuff figured out and they're mining and doing all this. I'm too late to this. I shouldn't continue because there's no way I'm going to catch up. And then like 14 years later, people are still playing that game like crazy, joining the game for the first time. So that was actually my first introduction to an MMO. And I guess the first time I got to realize that you're never too late to an MMO.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, EVE, EVE's a lot different than it was, 10 years ago or 5 years ago now. There's always opportunities for people to come in, and that kind of like existential dread of coming in being like, man, I'll never be able to catch up. I don't think we're ever going to have that with Star Citizen because it's skill based, or hopefully it will be skill based in every aspect of it. And so it really depends on you as the person to decide how much, results you're going to get out of your ship or your performance, right? Whereas EVE, it's like, okay, train dogfighting level 5, click, wait 5 days. So,
spreadsheet.
Yeah, like they did adjust the game a bit. So it's less, just kind of basically seniority based and much more how you manage it, right? But no, I get the feeling where you come in, you're just like, oh my God, that takes how long to get that ship? Like, bruh.
Yeah, and it's intimidating to look at. I mean, I don't, again, know how it is now, but back when I first started, I was like, there's a lot of numbers and stuff on screen. I can't
they call it
do all
spreadsheets in space for a reason, right?
I was already going to school. I didn't need more of it. So yeah, I backed out, and that was actually around the time I was really getting into space games, and I started to look at like space RPGs and stuff, and eventually stumbled on Star Citizen. And here we are talking about the same stuff here. So you used to do piracy stuff in EVE. You've come over to Star Citizen, and I don't think most people would consider you or your content to be piracy focused, but we tend to go where Star Citizen is pushing gameplay. And with 3.18, we saw a lot more focus on being able to kind of take cargo from another ship, which is like a huge incentive for stopping people. So how has that been? Actually, before we jump into how it's been going for you, let's define piracy, or even, as CIG seems to be trying to call it, outlaw gameplay, because it's not necessarily always just about shooting people to blow them up, right?
Yep. So how I define piracy is the illegal search and seizure of any individual's components, ship, or items against their will, right? In any way. So, if you board someone's ship and steal a box, it's piracy. If you board someone's ship and steal their Pico, it's piracy. If you shoot them into soft death and take every single piece of cargo,
Who's
it's
stealing
piracy.
Picos, man?
Well, we usually
Capital
deliver
crime.
Picos, but get your Pico license, right? But I mean, to me, it's pretty self-explanatory what piracy is. The real question I think for the Star Citizen community, and I can't speak for people, right? I can only speak for myself. But I think the issue stems from the differentiation between piracy and griefing. And I think that's different for a lot of different people, and especially different kind of play styles, right? Some individuals that play a certain way might consider piracy basically any form of PvP at all. And some people might, have a very fine definition of this is piracy, and then everything else is pretty much considered, PvP or griefing or all that kind of stuff, right? So, but for me, piracy is the stealing of people's cargo, right?
It really does kind of come down to interpretation. I mean, and
to some degree,
and what's
right?
happening at that moment. Yeah, because I'm sure while you've been doing this piracy, you've had certain people accept that they're being pirated and understand that, and other people yell at you for griefing.
Yeah, people are allowed to be upset when they're getting pirated. I know I never take offense to it. I mean, we've been called all kinds of funny stuff, that I've never seen a woman in my life, and just all kinds of funny things. And and I always say the same thing. I say, hey guys, you're allowed to be upset. Like, I don't take it personal. You can find us on YouTube, maybe some tips to be safe next time, right? And then you get some people that will be like, they're like, okay, I've been got, you know what I mean? They'll pull over and they'll be like, yeah, but you got me, and they'll cooperate. And those people usually, work away with most of their cargo intact, right? Because right now, it's all monopoly money. It doesn't really matter. The thing right now is more
keep
about
your grimy little hands off my AUEC.
Oh, buddy,
it is very real to me.
I mean, but that's that people are allowed to be upset. But
no, I get that. Like, we're all playing the game, and if you didn't get angry for getting pirated, then that wouldn't be the game, right? That the whole point of getting pirated is it's supposed to be bad for you. So yeah. It's monopoly money, but you should get upset. If you don't get upset, I'm worried about your emotions.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're pirating Vulcans, right? But it's exciting because that's part of the experience, right? And some people may not realize this, that we're going to get deeper into this conversation, right? I don't want to get off sidetrack here, but like I said in my recent video, piracy is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's only going to become more prevalent. And more organizations are going to do it, right? And trying to draw a moral line in the sand, like people say, individuals who interact and do piracy must be horrible human beings. I think that's kind of silly, right? And there seems to be a subset of individuals who really believe that, and I think that's, I kind of shake my head. I'm like, guys, come on. I mean, it's going to be a big part of Star Citizen. In fact, I think it's going to be one of the biggest allures of Star Citizen is the freedom to interact with people in any way you see fit, right? Especially in space, because it's big and dangerous, right? I mean, Chris himself said that, there will be no NPC in the game as dangerous as another player because people are unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love that about the concept of Star Citizen. I love that about the direction of the game. And the reason I'm confident in the way I feel about this position is because Chris himself, who's running the game, most likely feels very similar to how I feel about this. Because they're designing the game around so many aspects of piracy and, so many aspects around the law and the law enforcement side of the game. You need polarity. You need two sides of the coin to make the whole show work, right? Because if you don't have both those sides, then you just don't have a game, right? Yeah.
And we actually kind of talked about this a bit before the pod started. But you made the point there a little bit that, like, this has been a big part of the game. Maybe not piracy and stealing cargo and stuff, but combat attacking players has been around since the beginning. I think because combat has been the easiest thing to develop. Obviously, you don't have to come up with a bunch of intricate systems to make pew pew possible. But that doesn't mean that combat is going to be the only tool of getting around in the game or interacting with other people, right? This gets people a little bit scared that this game is focusing too heavily on piracy or too heavily on combat compared to other things like maybe meeting players and brokering deals and stuff like that. What would you say to those fears?
Well, I think it's a perspective thing, right? I mean, if you asked me 5 years ago, like the current state of the game was much different than it was now. I mean, the latest patch is the introduction of like real piracy, right? So naturally people are going to be like, the focus is on piracy, what's going on, right? But if you zoom out, you look at a larger picture, you start realizing that it's just another cog in the wheel as the game develops here, right? Maybe 6 months from now, we have an important economy update, CIG. And, the Hull series starts coming out, and we start getting a much more in-depth look at some of the more industrial gameplay. Engineering for ships starts coming out, and then all of a sudden people start saying, oh, did you forget about the piracy or the combat, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So it's just, they take them kind of one step at a time. They take these little gameplay loops and styles, and they just keep adding onto them, and they keep putting them into the game. So no, I wouldn't say that the game has too much of a focus in the grand scheme of things. I think right now the focus is piracy, though. I mean, this is the piracy patch, right? So, I mean, even Jared said himself in the one Inside Star Citizen video right before 318 went live, he's like, guys, like, we might find people out there who steal your cargo.
Yeah. And a lot of people jump into the game, and we're in one star system, so there's not really that much variance between how safe any one place is. But like, we're looking at a game that's aiming to set local areas that risk, like, you could fly through one system and have absolutely no problem without any escorts, right? And let's call it Terra, super safe. Fly through another system like Pyro, and you want like 3 or 4 ships covering your back. So like, the difference between those two scenarios changes the way people look at whether it's piracy or griefing, whether it's the game they want to play or they don't want to play. I feel like there's so much complexity that we're missing that attributes to piracy in that regard.
Yeah. We also are missing complexity in the anti-piracy side, right?
Right.
I mean, there is no lack of complexity in the sense that, things can always get more complex. CIG can always work on certain gameplay loops more. I mean, a lot of people want more in-depth bounty hunting. A lot of people like me want more in-depth flight model stuff, like for the master modes. I mean, that's a core pillar of the game that everything focuses on, because, we need that master mode system in so we can, all these other knock-on things, quantum drive, electronic warfare, shields, turret gunning, countermeasure systems, all that stuff, which does help the trading vessels and the nature of how they interact with other combat ships as well, right? Which then has an effect on piracy, which then has an effect on trading. Like, it all knock-on effects, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, there's no lack of enthusiasm for the increasing of complexity, that's for sure. I think a lot of people want to see a lot more in-depth stuff, but one step at a time, right?
Well, so what are like, for like anti-piracy, or maybe not anti-piracy, but the people who don't want to be pirated, I guess, what are some easy wins you could see with the game that would definitely help people avoid getting attacked or boarded? Or even like, a lot of times you might be getting attacked by somebody and normal players can't even target the other ship, right, to figure out what it is attacking them. They're just like, they're getting shot, they're panicking, they're hitting the scan button, the people are behind them, so they're not targeting them, and like, you freak out, you just get caught up. What are some of the things that you think could clear up these situations and make it easier for players to avoid that? Okay,
we might have a trigger warning here.
Oh boy.
And I mean this in the nicest way possible. I genuinely, like, I mean, no disrespect here, but a lot of people are unprepared and they panic when the situation starts turning south, right?
Me included.
So here's the reality. I put out a video recently and I kind of just laid it out there. I said, guys, I realize that there are not a ton of options for if you get caught, right? So the unfortunate part is there are options and people just don't take them or don't use them or don't know about them in the current game right now that we have, right? And they complain to CIG about there's no options, and yet they don't take the options they're given now right? And the options they're given now are genuinely good options to defend themselves, right? I mean, this is an example. Yesterday, we engaged the C2 Hercules in orbit and microtech atmosphere full of like 400 something units of gold. So that was about a $202.5 million profit off that kill, right? An hour later, we had a different gentleman show up in a C2. We set up on him. We set up interdictions in the right spots. We set eyes on him. We were just kind of waiting for him. And lo and behold, 1, 2, 3 arrows showed up, a Gladius. Oh, hey, here we go. There's a fight ensued. We were able to kill the security forces, but during the battle, guess what got away?
The Picos.
The Picos and the C2 full of gold, right? And I even said in chat, I said, guys, you're the first guys to actually get this done. I'm so proud of you guys. Good job. Like, I'm glad it got away. Like, awesome. You know what I mean? That, to me, that's like, you know what I mean? Someone's getting it. And whether they got paid or not, who knows? But, out of a $2.5 million profit, you don't think you could kick a couple bucks to your security forces, right? And that's the thing, right? It's like, you don't have to have people in fighters follow you around every step of the way, because that's kind of boring for the escort guys, and who knows if you're ever going to get attacked, right? The problem becomes in understanding the threat and being able to adapt and pivot to the threat as it happens, right? So if you go to a mining station and you start filling up with gold, and like I say in the video, pay attention, right? Most guys are not paying attention. They're not looking above them. They're not checking. They're not, looking at maybe asking global chat, hey, has anyone been pirated at SMO 18 recently? Or hey, has anyone seen any problems at, just basic stuff like that, right? Because global chat is basically a free intel network, right? People are going to say, hey, I see some crime stat people hanging around this area. That should tip you off like, there's something might be going on here, right? And then before you leave, just have one of your scouts fly up and just kind of fly around, look around just above your position. Those are options that you have in the game right now that could, I'd say about 80% of our catches could have been either mitigated or escaped if they had just followed these simple procedures, right?
But let's talk about your example with the C2. So that person had 3 or 4 ships, you said, show up right when they got attacked. But like in the game, you can't just like hit a distress button and have your friends know that you need help, right? You have to like go into your friends list, maybe send them, type in a message to them and make sure they know. And they're going to ask, oh, what are you getting attacked by? Well, hold on. Let me flip my ship around and target them so I can tell you what they're bringing so you can grab your ship. No.
But hold up. You're missing something here.
Okay.
Once you're airborne and flying, you're committed. So once you're airborne and flying and off you go, you're committed, right? So if you're now trying to be like, oh, I've been caught, it's like, sorry, man. Like,
but that's the point. That's what you said, right? Like your escorts don't need to be flying with you at the moment. They just need to be on standby somewhere near.
Hold up. Yeah, okay. Hold up. Standby, right? So it's pretty simple. Use them for the moment in time where you need that protection. Once you're up into space and quantum driving away, you're good. You're good. Most of the time, you'll be fine, right? Okay. Unless you get caught again by another spline trap or something. I mean, who knows? You should, in my opinion, always be changing your angle, never flying from one body to the next. Cut your warp halfway through, warp up to something else. If you feel like you're being tracked, warp up to another location, change your angle, and then warp to your location. So it kind of offsets the angle that you're coming from, right? Because interdiction is based off angles rather than like locking down whole areas, right?
Okay.
I made a video on interdiction as well for individuals to understand how it works so that they can better understand how to get away from it, right?
That YouTube channel will be in the show notes for anybody interested.
Yeah.
So
it's called interdiction, how to use it.
So that would still, though, I'm just going through the scenarios, right, with piracy, the things that you might end up finding yourself going through. Let's say you're going from SMO 10, like you said. Your escorts follow you up into space. You're good. They've done their job. You enter quantum and they stay behind. What happens when you get to the next destination where you're going to go and drop your stuff off? You get new escorts. Do you have your original escorts continue to follow you?
That's up to them. It's much more difficult. So here's in a perfect world, a proper C2 pilot should behave like this. Let's take it from the beginning, right? This is how you should fly if you're a trading vessel, if you want to stay safe. You want to go buy a gold barrel, whatever, right? You want to go to your mining station, whatever. You come in there, you fly in there. If you get attacked and you have no cargo, I don't know, look at the guy and be like, really, bro? I mean, if the pirates are shooting you before you even have cargo, they're not really good pirates. They're probably just people looking for a fight, right?
Would you call that griefing?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, I like the tricky ones.
That's a tricky one, right? I could understand why people would consider that griefing, right? I, by definition, don't believe that's griefing. I just think that's kind of shitty behavior, right? I mean, it's going to happen a lot in Pyro and other areas, including Stanton too, right? People think Stanton's all of a sudden going to be this, magical unicorns and rainbows when Pyro comes out because everyone's going to go to Pyro. But, people are going to go where the people are. I mean, EVE Online had this thing too where, the most PvP happened, guess what? In high sec space, like high security space, because that's where all the people were, right? So people were able to kind of play the mechanics and find ways to engage people, even in areas where the cops were prevalent, right? So in a strange kind of way, with the proper training, you're actually probably safer in more dangerous areas of space because you have more levels of freedom to keep yourself safe, right? But anyway, so back to the C2 example, right? And this is what I want to kind of explain to the general public is these are some options that you have as a trader to keep yourself safe. And if you employ these options correctly and you follow the procedure, then is a good chance you'll get away from a lot of like a lot of pirate attacks or opportunistic PvPers, that kind of stuff, right? Because again, the option is to get the ship full of cargo out into a safe spot and out of atmosphere. All you have to do is make it 10 kilometers out of atmosphere in Microtech and you're good to go, right? You don't have to make it to the 100K mark where you're out of atmosphere completely. You just need to make it out of that 10 kilometer layer and then off you go, right? So you fly in, you want to go buy gold, you want to go buy a barrel, it doesn't matter, right? You land on the facility, you look around. What do you see, right? Option number one, you look around, you see nothing. Okay, maybe there's nothing here. There could be someone with like infantry binos sitting in the bushes somewhere. You don't know that for sure, right? So that's the risk sometimes you take. But let's say there's a ship there. There's a ship. It's sitting on the pad. It's manned. It's just staring at you. That should be your first indicator of like, is this guy loading cargo? Yeah. Is that guy loading cargo? Like, what's he doing, right?
Like, that's a Gladius.
If he's not, if it's a Gladius, you'd be like, okay, then just watch him, right? I mean, he could be AFK, who knows, right? But you got two options here. If your spider senses are going off, just leave the server. Go up, fly up in atmosphere, bed log, come to a different server, fly down, and restart the process, right? If you feel like something's not right here, and you should be paying attention to those things, right? But let's say you come down, there's nothing there, or there's like a C2 that's also there, or a ship, or whatever, right? Go start buying your cargo, right? Load your cargo up. Before you leave, turn your global chat on. I don't care if you don't want to listen to global chat. I don't care if you have it turned off. Turn it on. Type in the chat. Has anyone seen pirates or people doing PvP at my location? And put your location out, right? Or don't put the location out and just ask, has there any activity been going on in the server, right? The global chat will tell you people are angry and they will say stuff. Like if someone gets killed or lynched, they're going to say in chat, yeah, this guy got me today, F him and this and that, right? So that should tell you if you need to bring security forces there or not, right? Second, if you look above and there's people loitering above you, if you see any interdictor ships like a Cuddy Blue, a Mantis, or an RSI Antares, any of those three ships, it doesn't matter if you think they're there for bad reasons or not, they're there for you. If there's interdiction ships in your location or around you, they're there for you, right? If you're the trading ship, they're there for you.
So
immediately you should reach out for security.
As the aggressor, where are you guys usually sitting, waiting for somebody to take off?
Well, that depends, right? Depends on the target, depends on what location, depends on how you want to run it. But usually what we do is we have interdictors placed either, a couple 100 kilometers above, maybe 10 kilometers above or 20 kilometers above or whatever. But they're going to be outside of your scan range. If the pirates are smart about it, what they'll do is they'll sit above your scan range so you can't target them, right? So you can't be 100% certain. But like I said, if you see one, if you ever, maybe it came down to land or it was searching for a target, and you have eyes on it for a second, that should tip off your warning bells, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're a C2. Let's say you've spotted some interdictors around or something fishy's been going on. You're like, something's not right here, right? Before you take off out of the armistice zone, what you're going to do is you're going to send your scout, because at this point you should have called for some security because something's up. You know that it's not going to be a clear run. And that security guy is just going to fly above your location and just kind of keep a lookout, see what's going on, right? If he sees nothing there, then you've got to make the choice. Okay, come out of the armistice zone, head straight up. If you see any activity around you, you start getting engaged. There's two options. If it's not an interdicting ship, get out of atmosphere as quick as you can. Get your scout here, or your interdiction, or your security guy, one or two, however many guys you have, to annoy that person long enough for you to get out, warp away, and good to go. If you see a Mantis, a Cuddy Blue, or an RSI Antares, so an interdiction ship, turn around, head straight back down to the armistice zone and land, and either get more security forces to deal with the threat that's showing up, or option is to contact the person and ask them, like, look, I don't have security forces, or I only have the one guy. You got to make a choice here, right? Because at that point you're committed, because you can't log off.
These things get a lot harder when armistice zones go away. It's no safe zone, right?
Well, right, but the armistice zones are a temporary placeholder, so it's not like
we'll have security systems and things, but that's what I was getting at earlier. Like, the game mechanics, they just don't support a lot of that protection, right? So like you said, we have the armistice zone.
But hold up. The armistice zones right now are the best protection you can ask for. It's literally an invincibility zone. Yeah. You literally can't get better than that. Anything we come to at this, anything next, is probably going to be less safe than what we have now, which is basically a god zone, right? Yeah. So use that right now as best you can, because that is it is the safe zone, right? You can't take damage, even though people can shoot at you and it looks like you're getting hit. You can't take damage, so don't panic. Just wait in the zone, and if they ram you, record it, send it to CIG, and they'll get banned, right? Because not from pad ramming, it's ridiculous.
I think the biggest thing in my mind that is missing to help people understand this is the ability to scan a ship, get their information, and then get their reputation. You just you can't get an idea of what somebody's long-term play style is right now. They could be the nicest person to you, get onto your ship with you, say hi, be just super cool, and play with you for an hour. And then at the end of that hour, when they realize, okay, they finally have the cargo on the ship that I want, they just walk over to you while you're flying, pop you in the head, and fly away with it all. And it's just, that's part of playing a game that's unfinished. But there are some of those types of things that the game will change when we start seeing that kind of stuff come in. Okay,
then I asked this question because I understand your viewpoint on this. I really do, but I believe it's a little bit misguided, because there will always be people who you will not be able to see what their intentions are. That's number one, right? And number two, what's stopping me from getting an alt account that doesn't have anything on it? It's a totally clean account, squeaky clean. Come up to you and scout you. And not arise suspicion, right? And that's the thing, right? It's in a world where we have alt accounts, I always kind of chuckle because people are like, oh, but the law system should protect. None of that stuff's going to matter, right? You have to keep yourself safe. You have to look around and be like, what's going on? And you have to find people that you trust, right? That's why organizations are really important, because you get that network of people that you trust after a long time, right? So,
well, I mean, it's like the real world now. You're talking about edge cases, right? You could get 200 emails from Nigerian princes that need a couple $100,000, right? And you caught 98% of them because you have the tools to do that. But there's that one or two people who know the things they need to do to get around that system. And that's just out of luck. You get screwed. Like you said, somebody might make a dupe account and they get you with that. But that other 98% of the times, I would much rather it be the game's fault than my own for not paying attention. Or rather, I would much rather it be my fault for not using the tools I'm given than the game for not giving me those tools. And that's, I don't want to get into a conversation about where the game is in development, because we are all here playing a game that we know is unfinished. So you're accepting that when you jump into these scenarios. But I do think that it's worth talking about how things will change considering piracy and protection as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. And my standpoint is always like, I wish it to be this way. I
Yeah.
want it to be this way, but the reality is it's this way. And so I'm going to teach and train people the tools they can right now to keep themselves safe, whether I agree with it or not. Right. It's just, that's the way, unfortunately, it is. Right.
I'm with you there. So escorts, turret gunners, backup, general help on deck when you need it. These are things that we actually hear a lot of folks saying, like, hey, you want to be a cargo hauler, you need to protect yourself. But there tends to be a little bit of a mismatch, I think, right now, given the amount that you get paid versus the amount you'd have to pay somebody else to help you with this job. And I think this is the biggest thing that is stopping a lot of people from taking escorts and stuff. You're only getting 20 to 30,000 UEC of profit maybe on your job, and you don't want to split that in half for somebody who might not even have to do anything. And B, you can't assign them like a mission. You know how you can assign a beacon to get medical rescue? You can't assign them a beacon to say, okay, you're within this distance of my ship. If I die, you lose reputation, kind of thing. How do you think, in your opinion, what would be a good payout for an escort compared to, say, the actual amount taken by the cargo hauler?
So I think the tools that people are forgetting is, again, the global chat thing, right? So first of all, if you're hiring security to follow you every step of the way, it's probably somebody in your organization, right? It's unlikely that someone who doesn't know you is just going to fly around and just be like, I mean, unless someone wants to do that gameplay, for me, that's just like boring.
That's
right?
another conversation, man, about organizations and how people can get into them. Because you can't, for somebody who just gets the game and jumps in, they don't even know organizations exist.
Okay, true. That's fine, right? But again, that's why global chat's there, right? So first of all, the only time you should be picking up security is if you know there's a credible threat. If you're already in space and you're flying around, you've made the choice to go without security because they're not going to be able to respond to you in time unless they're so well trained and they're so close and they know right away what's going on, and the person that's attacking you is not really aware of what's going, like how to really execute. Then maybe you might have some time, but that's an edge case scenario, right? Like I said in the example, is if you know there's a credible threat, you call security, go in a global chat, be like, can anyone come help me? That right there, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to come out and be like, yeah, I'll come help you out. I mean, I'll do it. I do it for free, but that's just me. I mean, other guys
and then
will
you
be
bring
like,
out your crew and you steal our gold.
No, if I give my word.
We got your back. Don't worry.
If I say I'm going to come protect you, that's what we do. We're a man of our word, right? So, and it's funny because like so many times we'd like pull people over, oh shit, one sec. He grabbed a sock, 1 sec. I don't want him eating socks. Sam, come here.
All right, we have lost our guest. I think he is in the middle of a piracy operation against his dog. So we'll just wait until he can get that gold back and get back over here. For everybody who's listening, though, I'll take this opportunity to say hi. Nice to see you. Hope you're enjoying this podcast. We have a great time with this, and we will be continuing for as long as I possibly can. Thanks.
Sam here doesn't like to eat socks because it's not good for him.
For those who are only listening, it looks like a dog has replaced Avenger One. Oh, no, Avenger One's back. Cool. There he is. All right. So...
sorry about that.
No problem. Where were we? What were we talking about?
Okay. Security forces and using global chat, right? So if you're a new player and you follow these kind of hard and fast rules, check your surroundings, look around, identify that there is a threat, and understand that if you're in atmosphere, you're in that spot, right? And you've identified that there's no interdictors around you or whatever, or there's some suspicion of pirate activity because you've asked in global chat, then bring in security personnel, right? Bring at least 1 or 2 people, and just as a distraction, right? And then let's say they engage some pirates. That's when you want to go, right? Because they're going to be busy engaging these security forces, and you'll have a chance to get away. Yesterday, we had that exact thing happen, right? We killed all the security forces, but the gold ship got away. So in the end, he made 2.8 mil, and his security forces had a good time.
But that's huge for somebody like that. But what if somebody's flying a freelancer and they're only looking at 30 to 40,000 UEs of profit, and they know there's a credible threat. So they want to have an escort. They want to have somebody to fly combat with them. And they
Yeah,
have to deal with the idea that, like, okay, every time I do this, I'm going to have to understand that half of my money is going to somebody else. Couldn't that eventually just discourage them from doing cargo?
Right. So the profit margin on, let's say, a Connie Max or Taurus or a Freelancer Max is, I think it's around 100K if you get like full gold or something else, right? That's a pretty good profit margin. You're in a much more susceptible ship. It's just plain and simple. Freelancer is very easy to take down. It's very easy to kill. Turret gunner or not, it's not a threat for a credible trained piracy team. At that point, you're kind of rolling the dice on the likelihood of it happening to you, right? It's unlikely that you'll get pirated very often. Right now, there's not a lot of groups out there looking for cargo or looking for attacks. So you're likely going to be able to get quite a few runs done before you get hit. But when you get hit, you're pretty much screwed, right? The ship's just not defendable. And the flight model isn't really conducive to multi-crew ships of that size because they can't range control and they can't project DPS and they don't have the tank to survive any kind of like reasonable amount of time, right? You should still ask for global chat. You should still ask for someone to come help a brother out. You'd be surprised. A lot of people will come just to spite the pirates. They'll be like, yeah, I'll come get you, buddy. You know what I mean? So, it is, it's either you lose the whole cargo or you pay half of it and you only make a small profit, but you live, right? I mean, it's up to people, right? Some people just decide to lose the whole cargo and they say, f it, right? But I don't see why you wouldn't just, I mean, it's good training too. Like, why not, give a kickback, right? But you'd be surprised. I think a lot of guys will come help if they know that there's a credible threat. Then they'll come help, right? Guys in Scorpiuses come by and help out, and people are out there trying to help each other. There's actually a lot more great people in the Star Citizen community than people that are.
Oh yeah, no, the community is pretty good. Global chat, I think, can give the wrong impression because obviously you only have like 10 to 20% of the actual people who are there talking. As like you go on Reddit, obviously you don't think that every person who goes on Reddit is also getting in those threads and chatting. A lot of good people just aren't talking. Mm-hmm. But low scale cargo hauling already is painful. I think overall the point I'm trying to get at here is that I think a lot of that comes down to we don't know how much we're supposed to be getting paid. All we have to go off of, because we don't have hangar fees, don't have NPC wages that we have to pay, you don't have medical insurance. There's like no money sinks. So there's no real good way of knowing how much I should get for delivering these 3 boxes. Right now we're like, hey, you want to do a good mission as a starter? Well, box delivery missions are crap because you get 5,000 UEs from 20 to 30 minutes of travel, whereas you can go and do bounties and make a bunch more money very quickly. So I feel like a big part of this is that low-scale cargo hauling sucks already because you're not making as much money as if you just joined somebody in a bigger ship and helped them. To add on top of that those people now are more likely to need escorts or combat help, it feels like there needs to be more incentive there, or at least CIG needs to kind of restructure how we think about UEC.
So you're not wrong. The risk / reward's not there yet. Is what's happening, right? The risk of cargo hauling in a small ship like that, you're taking a massive risk for not really that great of a profit. Now you can increase your risk by hauling drugs or Quantanium or other stuff, and your profit margin will increase. However, that also means that the loss might also come back to bite you, right? So
and the law,
right? So but again, it's a small margin. 20% is way too low. I've told CIG this. I said, it's way too low. Maybe they have it set to that point because
we don't have those money sinks.
We don't have those money sinks. And so they're like, okay, well, we're just going to slow down the rate of how fast people can make this money. Maybe that's why they did it, right? I'm a big fan. I know some people aren't a fan of this, but I personally am a big fan of when a ship is destroyed and you reclaim it, it should come back with standard components. Whatever was stock on that ship should get reset. And you'll have to buy all the components that you wanted again. So buy multiples, right?
Or what about component insurance? You could buy from the store.
Component insurance, but then make it expensive, right? Like
Yeah.
It's not cheap, right? Like it should be like $300K or something, you know what I mean? Like it should be a good portion, like as if you were to just buy the components again, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because what happens right now is, I know it's sucks. What if I 30K, we have 30K protection, so your ship's still there, right? Well, what if I
Sometimes,
what if I go AFK and I hit the cruise control and I hit an invisible asteroid, right? That sucks. I mean, there's no way around that. The game's in alpha. There's going to be times where your ship's going to blow up, or like me, I get rammed by, Microtech protection services, and I'm just like, bruh.
They're very bad at flying.
It's just like, you know what I mean? But if they're going to do that, then they should increase the amount of money people make off missions and off trading. I've always been a proponent of, I think the minimum, dude, of trading should be 50%. Like if you're hauling $1 million, you're making 500K off that. Like that's a minimum, you know what I mean? Unless you're hauling waste, and then it's different, right? But
yeah, and I don't think they mentioned this on the recent Inside Star Citizen, but they talked about the timer that you would need to load that cargo, and I think they're kind of just simulating the NPC loading time. But I'm wondering if they're going to add any sort of an currency drain to that timer. That as long as it takes you to load your cargo, maybe you're losing 1,000 UEC a minute, and that kind of starts to add into that idea of, okay, we're going to boost how much you're making, but now you can start to see where that drainage is coming from, and you need to balance that out. Because as of right now, like you said, like we said, I guess there's no money sink, and for them to boost the profit in order to make cargo hauling seem more worth it, they would also need to come up with some so that we don't have people just getting straight rich off of, just cargo hauling random stuff.
Well, I mean, that's the state we're in.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you, man. I mean, I hear you, man. I don't understand why. I mean, because the economy is just tuning numbers at the moment, right? And I don't really see. Yeah, I really truly don't understand why they don't have ISK. They don't have AUEC sinks in Star Citizen now as it is, or just jack the prices on insurance right now just to make it a sink. I don't know. I genuinely don't know, right?
We keep talking about the economy update. Like we were talking about it a ton before the podcast. It's like, I feel like there is nothing bigger as a sort of a detriment to understanding this game right now than the economy. I don't even know what a normal AUEC per hour they want in the long term. Maybe they only want us to, like, maybe a very good player would only be making 100,000 AUEC an hour. And we're just all setting our expectations too high for how much money we should be getting each share of a cargo run. And the lack of information on that is driving me crazy. It's giving me headaches, man.
Yeah, the lack of information on the economy side is disappointing, right? Because I know they showed Quanta like 4 years ago, and we pretty much haven't heard a peep since. And it's such a massive part of the game. We've got the Hull series coming out. I think it would be a big mistake, CIG, if you're watching. It would be a big mistake if you were to release the Hull C and not have some update on the economy and or prices or, something, right?
Yeah, because that's a ship. I mean, that's the ship you need an escort for.
I genuinely don't understand why we have such a weird supply and demand system, right? Like, yeah, if you load 100,000 units of gold, like load it, right? But if more people are doing it, then the price should drop, right?
Yeah, your dog agrees.
If everybody, if everybody is, shipping gold, it should just, at some point you're basically making like the same amount, like you're just cutting even, right? And then that's when okay, I got to start shipping something else, right?
Well, a big problem they have right now is, from what I understand, every single server in the game, or every shard rather, is pulling from the same economic source. So if one person on one shard pulls out all the gold, the other person on the other shard has no way of knowing that there was a ship there right before them that pulled all of that out. And I think that also really just hampers the experience.
So what would be wrong with just pulling the cap off and adding a loading timer? Like genuinely, right? And then just see how you look at the numbers and be like, okay, everyone's shipping gold right now. And then like, I don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. I think it's another one of those situations of like with the star map, for instance, they're not going to try and put a band-aid or fix any one little tiny part of it because they've got this sort of big vision of what it's going to be when they finally finish it and put it in the game. Problem is that we don't hear about it. Like we actually know they're working on the star map. That's, I think, one of the biggest problems with the game. But we get updates on the star maps being worked on. We get updates on the flight models being worked on outposts are being worked on, and pyro is being worked on, and even once in like 20 blue moons, server meshing is being worked on. But with the economy, like we literally have no clue.
Yeah, what
they have in mind.
And the thing is, economy is a big stuff. Like I'd say beside combat, it's the biggest part of the game, right? I mean, in a perfect world, I want the economy in a healthy place where people have money sinks, so there's reason to make money, you know. And I want player-driven stuff. Like I want to go to ArcCorp and open the ArcCorp player, almost like in Tarkov, right, where I click on market and I have what the NPCs are selling me for whatever prices they are, and then I hit market and I go and I see all this other stuff, right? And I see like cool subscriber items that people were able to get, Janelite, all kinds of stuff. And then people can decide what prices they want to pay for it, right? So I put up Janelite. I say I'm going to sell it for this much because you can't get Janelite in the area that I'm trying to buy. Let's say Grimhex, right? There's no Janelite at Yella Grimhex as far as I understand, unless I'm mistaken, right? But or maybe they just don't want to waste time, you know, looking for it. They're like, hey, I need 5 Janelites so I can, you know, do whatever, right? That's the stuff, like, you know, in a perfect world, that's what we're looking at, right?
And that's the idea. I mean, that's what they've set up. I said we have no clue. We do have some clue. Like you said, they've put out a couple of videos about the simulation and that, like, there will be economic nodes that require a certain amount of materials, so they'll put out missions to get those cargo haulers. But besides that, we just haven't had a good view of that.
Yeah.
But we're talking about escorts and security and stuff like that. And I want this sort of topic that we're rolling into to be a discussion about what we currently have, but also looking at the future of, you've got your, what was it called? Legionnaire, I think it is, the hacking ship that can dock.
Yes.
So you've got this idea that, like, not only are you going to be getting shot at in space, you might also be getting boarded. So it might not just be worth having a ship escort, but also having FPS security on your ship in some of those riskier places. Do you think that there is going to be a way for CIG to make this kind of gameplay entertaining enough that people want to just go and do it?
Oh, it's entertaining, all right.
As an FPS person on a ship.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, it's one of your responsibilities as a crew, right? And also, see, it's tricky because you're kind of in a losing position if you're soft death, right? All you're doing as Sam, easy boy. All you're doing is prolonging the amount of time that the pirates have to basically take your cargo, right? You might be able to take out 1 or 2 of them, you know, cool, right? But if you leave that ship and you go into dead space, like you just go into open space, they're going to kill you with their ship guns, right? So you're stuck to that ship, right? Is it exciting to board a ship? I'll be honest.
Oh.
It's probably some of the most exciting things I've ever done in gaming, right? And even in its current janky state, right? It's so much fun. It gets the blood going, right? So really defending a ship that's been soft at, again, right? This, like, you can't go anywhere without friends. That's why I always tell people, it's like, get in a Discord, find a crew to roll with. If you play Star Citizen solo, you got to accept the fact that you're going to be prey to a lot of the other groups out there that are working together, right? So if you get shot down and you have no security forces, Sam, easy bud. And you have no security forces around you and none on the way, your only option is to talk to the pirates and ask for a surrender. You know what I mean? Some of them will agree. Some of them will be like, yeah, cool, bro, whatever. And they'll kill you anyway, right? But if you fight, you're going to die regardless, unless you're John Wick. And I mean, you can try it, but let's say you kill the boarding team. Okay, how are you going to stop the 2 or 3 ships that are now sitting outside you, right? Like, you're in a lose-lose situation, right?
Yeah.
Unless you have friends. Unless you have friends and you call for help. And, you know, you're able to defend the ship and reduce them, like really make it slow so that they can't get the cargo off the ship in time because you're killing the boarding team or doing whatever, right? That is an option, right? We haven't met any serious resistance on board ships that we've taken over, even with like multiple crew. But people do fight.
Well, let's talk about the opposite then. if you're going to hire security, they need to have something to do. And but you can't just have it be where anytime you go out in a cargo hauling ship, you're going to get attacked. You can't guarantee security has fun, because kind of the whole idea is that you don't want to get attacked. So they have to come up with this like balance of, hey, you're going through a dangerous area, so you might get attacked, be ready for it. But at the same time, you also just need to be able to pay your people for possibly essentially just sitting along. And that might just not be fun enough for folks.
Yep. So I think how they're going to do it, which makes sense to me, is for the high risk areas, it's good to grab a couple guys, right? Say, hey, you guys want to make some money? Just get me through the pyro gate, and then I can take it from there, right? But that also is predicated on that the multi-crew ship can defend itself against attackers. Because right now, all multi-crew ships are basically just food for fighters, right? If you're in a fully crewed Connie, you're helpless against a team of coordinated light fighters. It's just, or even heavies, right? So we're kind of in this weird spot where they need babysitting 24/7, and that's a problem, right?
So that's boring.
Because either you babysit them 24/7 and you just take the fact that you're going to be bored 80% of the time, or you have organizational guys, or you just risk it and you just go with it and you freeball it, and every once in a while you get caught, right? I'm of the opinion of, I understand that people aren't going to do that, and that's unreasonable to ask, because like I don't do it. And if people ask me to babysit them all day, I'd be like, dude, I got better things to do, right?
Even if you were getting paid, it's just boring.
It's just not worth my time, because
Right.
I'd make more money if I just do bounty missions, and like it's not even worth my time, right? So, I'm of the opinion of, if you know there's a credible threat, bring some security guys in, deal with the threat and that threat only, and then off you go. Like for Jumptown, for example, right? If you don't bring security to Jumptown, you only have yourself to blame. It's Jumptown, right? If you don't bring security to an SMO 18 location where you're buying gold, you only have yourself to blame, right? And people probably aren't used to that location or places on Daymar to be high risk zones, but you should consider places where you're buying gold high risk locations, and treat them like Jumptown.
Yeah.
Once you're outside of those locations, like once you're good, right? Once you've loaded cargo and you're out of the atmosphere and you've gone to warp, the chance of pirates catching you from that point is very low. And if you follow some basic rules of risk mitigation, the chance of you getting caught even by coordinated groups of pirates is infinitesimally small, right?
Yeah.
So that's the zone where they're going to get you. They're going to get you when you're leaving gold, right? They're going to get you at Jumptown, and they're going to get you in SMO 18 or Shubin Mining at Daymar. That's where they're going to get you. So if you just cover those bases, at the exact time that you're there, you're good to go. Then you don't have to have security follow you around all day.
And that idea of risk and reward is actually, I'm glad we loop back around to that, because that's something that's missing a lot, as we talked about at the beginning, with the Stanton system being the only place. Obviously you're going to have higher risk, higher reward in Pyro than you do in Stanton. And in Stanton, you'll have higher risk and higher reward than in Terra. And there needs to be even a localized system where if you're running cargo from, say, Crusader out to Crusader L1, you do have to go past Yella. You have to go past a space that is dominated by Ninetails, as opposed to, say, running cargo from Mike L1 to Microtech, where there's not as much going on there. That's one of those things that I think is just really missing from this game, is like a player can't go into the star map and see, okay, there's a lot of pirate activity in this part of the system. I don't have any escorts. I don't have any friends. I'll stay away from there. Instead, they kind of have to just run a route, see if it's bad, see if, go on global chat and ask questions. You can't be proactive in understanding your routes and your risk.
Yeah. That's why the way I look at it is, whatever the most profitable route is, you should consider high risk.
True.
Whether it actually is or not in terms of monetary gain has no bearing, right? The fact is, gold is the highest risk asset right now because you make the most on it, right? So you should consider it a high risk security location.
But again, how do you find that out? As a player who just jumped into the game, doesn't know the websites or the meta, how do you figure that out?
Well, that is the game. That is the game, in the sense that interacting with other people is part of the game experience, right? I mean, if you gave everybody all the information right off the top, that would defeat the point of the game. We don't have a skill system like Eve does. We don't have a RPG style system where it's like strength +5 and this and that. Like you, the person, like you are the character of the game, right? So it's the knowledge that you gain through the experiences in the game that really gives you the advantage and the step up, right? Now you can learn it through online tools and online communities, which is good. Or you can learn it through global chat, just asking guys, and they'll say, hey, it's this route, whatever, right? Or by trial and error, right? I mean, whatever way you want to do it. But I think the most fun way is to learn it by being part of a team, right? Because I don't think CIG or Star Citizen should give people all the information on a big spreadsheet. Be like, here's all the thing you ever need to know, because it's also always changing, right? And with Quanza, that's going to change too. People are going to have good moments, bad moments, boom or bust kind of stuff, right? So
true. But I would say, I think this reminds me of 3.19 when we got mining. For the first week, nobody knew where to get the best stuff. And that is part of the fun of a new patch, of a new mechanic. You get to go in and discover that. But for somebody who's playing casually, there is literally no possible way that they could understand what was going on until all of the masters, the YouTubers who got the guides, the people who were posting the tutorials on Reddit were able to get that information out. And I think that's one thing that really hurts this side of the game, is that a lot of the stuff you have to figure out in this game, you either have to leave the game to figure out, or you can go into global chat and trust that those people actually know what they're talking about. Somebody might say, oh yeah, the best trade route is getting Laranite from Ariel to Hurston. Somebody else comes in and they're like, no, that's a month old. Now it's this. Somebody else comes in and says, actually, everybody thought it was that, but really it's this. And as a new player, you're just like, well, I guess I'll just run every route and see what works.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fun of the game, though. You know what I mean? Like that is playing the game, is finding where to make that money and how to get it and the risk you take. And, I think CIG can do a little bit better of a job when it comes to like identifying these kinds of things. And with the new star map, maybe we'll get some better information. Right?
I think so, yeah.
But I mean, ultimately, a lot of games out there, you got to go to third-party sources to really get the meta information, right? So if CIG doesn't do a good job giving you the meta information, I'm really not that torn up about it, because it gives something for people to do. It gives something for people to talk about. It gives something for organizations to do and to catalog. And I think that's kind of really interesting, right? I know a lot about combat, and I put all the meta information I can out there into the universe. But if CIG doesn't talk to you about 45s, like throttle control, roll aim, velocity indicator, like they don't tell you any of that stuff. They just give it to you and they're like, figure it out. You know what I mean? But I feel like that's kind of because we're in the alpha state of the game the way it is right now, right?
And I know people are going to take this and say that I'm being very negative and I'm hating on the system and all that.
Negative?
These are the things that keep me up at night, right? Like this is the stuff I think about when I think about the development of the game. Stuff I know they're going to do. I'm just very, very excited to see them do it and hear how they're going to. I think it's not great to have people have to leave the game to learn stuff. I'm glad they put like a guide system in the main menu now. Like it's one step. It still takes you to the website, but it's another step. Like plenty of people download the game launcher, get into the game, and then like, hey, can I get somebody to help me? It's nice to have the guide system there in the main menu. I don't think that we should get all the information right off the bat, but I do think that we should get a decent amount of support in understanding the tools to get that information.
So what would be some examples of that information?
The Arc Star map has an overlay. This is on the website, and you can go in there and you can toggle on risk in the system, and you can see actively in the Stanton system where is supposed to be risky and dangerous and where is supposed to be economically strong. Something as simple as that could.
Okay. Where would they say Microtech is the most risky?
No. I think on the map it's like either Hurston or Crusader area. Pretty sure it's Crusader area because you've got yellow concentration of pirates and stuff.
So Microtech is the most risky right now.
So that would
because the most people are gold trading, and the most people that we have caught and the most PvP we've had in the last month has all been a microtech, right?
The Arc Star map doesn't track the game. This is like it's lore based, yeah. So
okay, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. If the star map did this and it tracked, let's say, beacons, they don't even have to be like, oh, we're diving into the system and seeing where ships are getting blown up. They could just track where combat beacons are getting spawned and be like, okay, there's a lot going on here.
Or crimes committed, vehicle destruction, this and that, right?
Yeah.
So, like player vehicle destruction, like where is it happening, right? And they'll show you. I mean, I am 100% down for that. I mean, I really want there to be a system in place for that. It would honestly make my life so much easier as a hunter, because I'd be able to see I should be able to see trade lanes. And I mean, I see the trade lanes as they are now, right? But it's just more information about what movement is going on in the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would make my job as mercenary so much better, because then piracy would be easy, but then also anti-piracy would be easy too, right? Because you'd actually be able to see like, okay, this is where I'm most likely to find pirates, right? And when we do, I always find it funny because some people are like, oh my God, Avenger's gone full piracy. And I kind of chuckle. I'm just like, because they don't see the times where like we see other pirate organizations, or they're catching someone or doing something, or we see the little interdiction indicator pop up. So we know that there's a group they're hunting. Like we'll get all our guys together and we'll go bust that camp up. Like we'll intentionally get caught by it and then catch them all, reverse kappa, and we'll kill them all. Right.
Yeah.
And
I think, I think that's going to be those types of things, that on top of something else that I was going to discuss was just reputation, being able to understand a dossier of criminals that have been tracked down in the system and their long-term reputations would be nice. I think that's probably something we'll see with bounty hunting V2, but that's another one of those things that can help in the long run.
Yeah, I think bounty hunting V2 is long overdue. That's for sure, right? So, I mean, hopefully we get to that point, right?
And you mentioned meta.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of what I want to close on, is the meta around this type of gameplay and changing that meta. When it comes to needing to have escorts stand up for yourself, protect yourself, understanding the strategies we've talked about today, there needs to be a shift in either the community or the developers that pushes that meta, that maybe they make a tutorial for cargo hauling, and in that tutorial they explicitly say you're going to want escorts at certain times, so be prepared to use so-and-so beacon. Or maybe we as players just make the overall community-based decision that escorts are suddenly necessary. Judging by how gamers work, I feel like the community is not going to be able to do that, but who do you think has the responsibility of changing that meta to understand how things move forward combating pirates now?
The individual.
So the community.
Nope, not the community, the individual, right? Because you're going to have YouTube videos out there, they're going to help, but ultimately it comes down to each individual person assessing their risk and understanding the threats that they're going to engage, right? It's not the community's responsibility to mitigate risk. It's yours. It's not CIG's responsibility. It's yours, right? And that can sometimes be a tough pill to swallow, because people, they like to point fingers and blame. Oh, well, I only got killed because there was pirates there. Well, who got caught? You did, right? Who didn't use a scout? Who didn't pay attention to the signs? Who doesn't understand interdiction? Like, all these things are important, right? And there are YouTube videos out there that will teach you these things. If there's a knowledge gap and you're unaware of how to defend yourself, there are places out there where you can learn that information. But the individual has to take their own, safety and the responsibility to get that information so that they understand, right?
Right.
Like, the information is out there, right? So that's why I say it's not the community's responsibility, because the community has done what it can, right?
Yeah.
The individuals have to be the ones to do it, right? And that's the unfortunate part, because people don't take responsibility for getting caught. I mean, I see it all the time. I catch somebody, and the first thing out of their trap is you're this, and that, and I'm like, I get it, you're allowed to be upset, but they're frustrated because they got caught. And then and a lot of times I'll explain to them, I'll say, you got caught because of this. Here's where you went wrong, and I'll just walk them through it, right? Some of them get upset still, but it's mostly because I think they realize, like, they got caught.
But then you have to go. Let's say that person then goes and joins somebody else to haul some cargo, and that person, they're trying to argue with, well, I got attacked the other day, we need escorts. This person's saying, nah, it never happens, it's not a problem. And then they go out, they run the cargo route, and it doesn't happen. So then this person who originally got attacked is like, wait, maybe I just ran into the only person that actually does that. And they have less of an incentive to keep protecting themselves.
Okay. So you can take that standpoint, but the beautiful thing about that point of view is it's going to change, and it's going to change to the detriment of the person who doesn't bring security.
And
because piracy will only increase in activity, will only increase in popularity. I mean, we've already seen multiple pirate groups out as it is now. Like, the reason why AVS is pirating right now is because it's new content, it's new stuff. We want to get used to it. We want to understand it, and it's fun, right? But as soon as there starts becoming competition and there's a lot more other pirate groups out there, I mean, we're going to be hunting pirates.
Yeah, and that change you're talking about starts with the players.
Yeah, it starts with the players. It starts with each individual person realizing that these threats are only going to increase. And I've seen the trend. I've seen the trend start ticking up in activity. It's getting more and more risky because more and more people are realizing, like, wait a minute, I can make 2 million off a gold kill. It's like, buddy, you know what I mean? So people are starting to do it now, right? Whether that's because of my videos and other people's videos or people just talking about it, right? It's now becoming part of the Star Citizens kind of zeitgeist, right? And that's a good thing. Yeah. That's a really good thing, right? Because that's exactly what CIG has put into the game. And, for years, people who playing Star Citizen who have not had any risk whatsoever except for the risk of a 30K, right? And now all of a sudden they're realizing, oh boy, I have real risk in making a big profit on this turnover. If I have a $2.8 million C2, that's $1 million profit almost, right? That's a lot of money for 40 minutes of gameplay. I mean, are you going to make $1 million AUC per hour? Right? So if you're going to risk that much, you're going to make a good amount too, right? So, but that comes with risks, and the risks is people are going to just take it from you because it's 2.8 million, right?
Yeah, I think there's, I mean, this is a timeless conversation because this is just always changing, and it's just so interesting because there's so much that goes into it. I mean, as they add certain things, like they added the cargo refactor and suddenly piracy takes a step up. They add bounty hunting V2 and suddenly we have different ways to fight against it. They add an economy update and suddenly we understand how we can pay each other for escorts. It's just always changing. It's hard to get a grasp on how this works for a game that's still being built. It's a really interesting topic though.
But you know what doesn't change?
The guns.
Well, they change a lot. What doesn't change is the individual's personal responsibility for their safety. The mechanics in the game may change, the tactical situation may change, but the individual who goes, how do I stay safe here? That doesn't change. The people that are going to learn the hard way are the people that are going to fly around in C2s full of millions of dollars of cargo, and they're going to get caught. If they're going to get caught by us, they're going to get caught by other groups, and they're going to get caught, and they're going to go two things. They're going to go, one, I hate this game. This is the worst thing ever. And they're going to try it again and get caught again. Or they're going to go, well, maybe I need to be safe. Maybe I need to get a couple guys together to get me out of that hot zone. Just get me out of that hot zone and I can take it from there. You know what I mean? Because then it's a win-win for both people. I mean, there are so many mercenary and combat focused orgs out there that would be dying for an opportunity to come in and have a reason to fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's exciting. It's like, hey guys, we got a mission. We got a C2 that's locked down. He can't get out. Let's get a couple ships together. We're dealing with 1 or 2 pirates. Let's go. Come on. You know what I mean? Yeah. Guys love that stuff. I mean, I know my guys they jump, they knot the bit. You know what I mean? If they get an intel drop like that and they're like, hey guys, we got something going on. We need guys to come in here and bust them up. Like, guys come out of the woodwork, you know what I mean? So, and that's exciting for everybody, right? It's exciting for the combat groups. It's exciting for the trader to know, like, oh, I'm going to wait here, and he gets to sit there and watch the battle up ahead and then get the green light to go, and like, it's exciting for him too, right? It's just, it's all around. It's just, it breathes life into the exciting experience of Star Citizen, right? But that all comes with risk, right? So, and it comes down to the individual deciding to keep their security as paramount, right? So if you're going to take big risk, like hauling tons of gold, just be aware that SMO 18 on Microtech, Daymar Shubin Mining Facility 1, SCD 1 on Daymar are 2 locations where you can buy gold. They are considered high risk zones. Be prepared for a fight. Be prepared to get pirated if you go to those areas, because those where you buy gold and people sell them, right? So treat them like Jumptown.
It's exciting to have conversations that are more about this sort of intertwining of game systems than just the game mechanics themselves. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, Avenger. This has been a good one. I think it won't be the last one that we have on this topic, and this one will just be ever growing. Your stuff's going to be linked down below in the show notes for the audio and video podcast, but why don't you let everybody know right here where they can find you?
Well, as always, you can find me at Avenger__1 on Twitch, and then Avenger__1 on YouTube, right? And then Avenger One is my handle in game. So if you see Avenger One without the underscores, that's also me, right? And then Twitter is Avenger One.
So I may have missed an underscore there on the. Let me just add that in there. There we go.
All good, brother.
All better.
All good.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me for episode 108, dude. If you guys haven't seen it, we've had a couple of episodes previously. In fact, I think the episode we did with Fairster is one of the most popular on the YouTube channel. So check that out if you haven't. Yeah, it's a good talk. It was a great talk. I appreciate you joining me as always. Thank you, everybody who listened or watched. If you want to do one of the other, we're on YouTube or any of the podcast platforms you like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google. Please leave us a review or a rating if you enjoy the show. Feel free to hop into the Discord and give us suggestions on somebody you might want to see. And if you are a supporter, you can always come and join us live and ask questions to our guests as well. But with that, I'd like to thank you one last time for joining me, Avenger.
Thank you for having me, buddy. I always love it.
Yeah. And I will catch all of you next week in the next episode. Have a good one.